Okay, let's talk about Lyme disease, part 4. So like I mentioned in the previous video, the way I learned about the emotional component of Lyme disease was through two modalities that I studied really thoroughly. The first one was German New Medicine, which was developed by a German oncologist, a medical doctor, who, based on his traumatic experience of losing his own son, soon after that developed a testicular cancer, and puzzled by this diagnosis, he wanted to find out if there was a correlation between the loss of his son and then his diagnosis soon after. So what he did was, as an oncologist, he started asking his patients about events that took place prior to the diagnosis, their cancer diagnosis. And he analyzed every single case individually. And after many, many years of research, he came to a conclusion that specific types of trauma manifested in specific types of cancer. And later on, he also started looking at the brain scans of those patients, because obviously he had access to their files, and he did it as a research. And what he discovered was that each cancer patient had a lesion in a specific part of their brain which was responsible for that area in the body. So as we know, the brain is the main computer which governs the body. And when he started noticing those lesions in specific parts of the brain and started noticing a pattern that a specific event in a group of patients would cause cancer in a specific part of the body, he knew that he was about to discover something really kind of like a discovery that nobody ever considered, never looked into. So in the course of over 40 years, he when he was doing his research, he discovered that specific traumatic events in our life can cause a biological shock in the body, which then is seen, visible on a brain scan. And depending on where the shock was recorded in the brain, which area of the brain was affected, the part of the body that corresponds to this area of the brain could be affected, and the tumor could be located just there. So German New Medicine is not so much a modality, it's not some sort of protocol that is applied in order to heal. It's more about understanding how the emotional shock affects the physical body, and that there is a very strong correlation between specific events, specific situations in our life, and different types of conditions, because obviously it's not just about cancer. Different conditions can be triggered and developed following a specific biological shock, biological conflict caused by an event. Sometimes it's not a specific event, sometimes it's just a very strong, powerful belief that we hold about life, about ourselves, which is causing, which eventually causes strong emotional impact on the brain, on our subconscious mind, and can cause similar lesions and similar dysfunctions in the brain, and then they are reflected in the body. So let's go back to Lyme disease. According to Dr. Hammer, Lyme disease is linked to a biological conflict of self-devaluation. What self-devaluation means, according to Dr. Hammer, is a belief that we are not good enough, that usually linked to low self-esteem, and as a result we tend to prove that we are worthy, that we are good enough, and this usually reflects in a specific type of personality, which is overachieving, trying too hard to kind of please our ego and compensate for the inner feeling of not being good enough. So we are striving for perfection. Perfectionism is one of them. The second one is we often become people pleasers, because this becomes one of the coping mechanisms for us to prove to ourselves and to others that we are good, that if we help others, if we do everything to make people happy, usually neglecting our own needs and emotions, this is our way of compensating for feeling low about ourselves and not good enough. So people pleasing, perfectionism, overachieving, striving for, just trying hard to be the best, trying to be as good as others, and really raising high standards. This is one of the common traits for Lyme disease. And even though we sometimes achieve those goals by pushing really hard and doing our best to prove that we can do the things that other people achieve, let's say, easily, the inner dialogue and the inner message in our subconscious mind is that we have to try really hard to get there. So the underlying program is I'm not good enough, and I have to push extremely hard to achieve what I want to achieve, what I believe is important for me, what I believe is going to make me feel good about myself if I achieve this. And yeah, the self-devaluation conflict is the main program that Dr. Hammer talks about in his books. And I must say, when I learned about this for the first time, it was such an eye-opener for me, because it made completely perfect sense. I was exactly this type of person for most of my life, striving and trying to prove that I am good enough, that I can do things, really efforting and pushing myself to the limits. because deep down I considered myself worse than others, and for me to be able to feel good about myself, I had to either make everybody around me happy, usually at my own cost. So for example, yeah, really push myself for others, almost like taking responsibility for other people, just to make sure that they believe that I am the strong one, the one that can manage everything. But also in terms of career and education, it's about striving for the best results, and if we don't get there, we feel like a failure. So this is a very common perception and common approach to life for people with perfectionism and overachieving. And what Lyme disease really becomes when we develop the symptoms, it's the program gets activated to give us a message that this is where we are out of balance on an emotional subconscious level. This is where we need to change. And the reason why so many people still struggle understanding this, it's like, I've been trying, and like, so what's happening? Other people can achieve things and I can't, so then what's wrong with me? Is my body not strong enough? It's not about this. It's about how you perceive yourself. A lot of people struggle with perfectionism. A lot of people struggle with this conflict. But number one, not everyone is supposed to learn a lesson through an illness. So it's not like everyone who goes through, who has this sort of program running, is going to develop Lyme disease. So some people didn't come here to learn this sort of lesson. On a soul level, they didn't plan this as one of the things that they want to accomplish and learn and move on. So you may see people who have similar personality traits and they are fine because they have other lessons planned to go through. And secondly, maybe if this sort of and that's a very common thing, if this sort of approach to life, striving for perfection and pushing hard, has been running in your family for a while, if this is like the norm in your family, for your parents, for your grandparents, and this is what you were told, that that's how you should live, maybe, and very often this is the case from a spiritual perspective, you are the one who is supposed to break that cycle, so that you heal this, you change this, and you don't pass it on any further, because this is a very unhealthy pattern. And nowadays, the energy of the planet, with the ascension process going on, there's lots of old programming that needs to be cleared, and Lyme disease is one of those conditions that helps people remove negative programming of this sort, striving to perfection, comparing to others, people pleasing, because we are aiming for self-love, self-acceptance, and understanding that these are old, unhealthy ways of living our lives. And that's why a lot of people these days suffer from conditions like Lyme disease, because this way of life, this programming, doesn't serve anyone anymore and needs to be erased from collective consciousness. So Borrelia is the bacteria that I'm going to talk about it when I speak about microbioenergetics, because then we will move closer to discussing the microbes and the role of microbes. But the symbolic code and role of this bacteria is to stop people from being perfectionists and overachievers. And it's not the only microbe. The other one, Epstein-Barr, plays a similar role, but Borrelia has a deeper meaning to do with self-worth and self-esteem. I hope this makes sense. If you have any questions, I can always record more to discuss this. But this is the main concept, and I have seen this in myself. I have seen this in most of my clients that I treated for Lyme disease or with this diagnosis. There's lots of literature that talks about it, that these are the typical personality traits linked to Lyme disease. So what actually happens is the program gets activated for us to get that message. And as long as we have the awareness that this is what's going on, this is the main way you can heal, by addressing the root cause, the emotional main trigger for Lyme disease. So you need to ask yourself, what do I think of myself? How do I see myself? And probably as you are listening to this video, most of you will get an aha moment. You may have heard about this somewhere. And this is what the condition is trying to tell you, because everything happens in our life for a reason. We don't get random illnesses caused by just that would make no sense. Everything in the universe makes sense. So, and also we are always responsible for our own illness. Everything that happens in our lives is a reflection of what's within, what sort of beliefs, emotions, trauma, and perceptions we are holding inside. So what's inside, that's what we see on the outside. So that's what's reflected in the body in this case. I will be talking more in the next video about the second modality. It's going to give you a closer look at the role of microbes in Lyme disease. But I hope this makes sense.